The mansion fell into an unnatural silence, not because of noise, but because of a sudden pause that felt heavier than shouting. In the center of the lavish living room, beneath a crystal chandelier glowing like frozen fire, a woman's raised hand hung in the air, ready to strike, as it had done many times before. Servants stood frozen in fear, their eyes lowered, their bodies stiff with expectation. They knew this pattern too well. When Bianca Hele, the billionaire S.A., celebrated fiancée, lost her temper, someone always paid the price. And today, her anger burned hotter than usual. But something happened that shattered routine. A smaller hand reached up and caught Bianca's wrist midair, not trembling, not pleading, but firm and unyielding. The entire room gasped, as shock rippled through every witness standing there. The hand belonged to a new housemaid named Zara, a quiet young woman who had arrived only days earlier. She was soft-spoken, unnoticed, and unremarkable to most. Yet in that moment, she stood like a wall against cruelty. Bianca's eyes widened in disbelief as she turned toward the girl who dared to stop her. Her voice rose sharply, slicing through the silence, as she demanded to know what Zara thought she was doing. Zara did not answer immediately. Her grip stayed steady. Her breathing stayed calm. Her eyes held no fear, only resolve. That alone made the moment dangerous. Unseen by the servants, someone had stopped in the hallway outside the room. Alexander Cole, the tech billionaire who owned the mansion, had just returned from a phone call when the raised voices caught his attention. He slowed his steps, curiosity turning into concern as he turned toward the living room. What he saw made his chest tighten. His fiancée, furious, restrained by a maid, a scene he never imagined unfolding under his roof. Alexander did not interrupt. He watched silently as Bianca yanked her arm, demanding release, her composure cracking under the weight of embarrassment. Her authority, once unquestioned, trembled in front of witnesses. Zara finally spoke, her voice low but steady, saying only that she would not allow anyone to be harmed unjustly. The simplicity of her words carried more weight than shouting ever could. The servants exchanged frightened glances. Some felt hope for the first time. Others feared consequences they had learned to expect. Bianca's anger shifted into something darker, fueled by wounded pride. She accused Zara of disrespect, of forgetting her place, of crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Her voice echoed sharply off the marble walls, demanding obedience through fear. Alexander felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, confusion mixed with discomfort, as the image before him clashed violently with a woman he believed he knew. Before anyone could move, another presence entered the hallway behind him, footsteps slow and deliberate. A woman whose arrival carried authority without noise, whose gaze alone commanded attention. The servants felt it immediately. A shift in the air. The woman who had stepped inside was not meant to be there, yet her presence felt inevitable. Bianca finally freed her wrist, stepping back with a sharp breath, trying to regain control. Her eyes flicked toward the entrance, and for the first time, fear flashed across her face. The woman in the doorway studied the room quietly, her expression unreadable, before her eyes settled on Bianca. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken judgment. Alexander realized then that this moment was not random. It was the beginning of something long overdue, something buried beneath years of comfort and deception. Unbeknownst to everyone present, this confrontation was only the surface of a truth that had been waiting to rise. A truth tied to past choices, hidden harm, and a reckoning that could no longer be avoided. And as the chandelier continued to glow above them, indifferent to human conflict, the lives of everyone in that room began to change in ways none of them could yet understand. The woman who had entered the room stepped forward slowly, her presence commanding silence, without a single word. She was elegant but unadorned, her posture straight, her eyes sharp with understanding that came from experience rather than privilege. Alexander recognized her instantly, though it had been years since he last saw her. Her name was Eleanor Cole, Alexander's mother, a woman the city admired for her philanthropy, but whom few truly knew. She had arrived unannounced, driven by an instinct she could not explain, only to witness a moment that confirmed long-suppressed doubts. Bianca forced a smile, one polished and practiced, greeting Eleanor with warmth that did not reach her eyes. Her voice softened, as if the tension moments ago had never existed, but the servants could still feel the echo of her anger in the room. Eleanor did not return the smile. Her gaze moved past Bianca and settled on Zara, who stood quietly near the wall now, hands folded, eyes lowered, bracing for consequences. Eleanor studied her with curiosity rather than judgment. Alexander finally spoke, asking his mother why she had come so suddenly. Eleanor replied calmly that she wanted to see the home her son planned to build his future in, and the woman he intended to build it with. Her words landed heavier than they sounded. Bianca laughed lightly, dismissing the earlier scene as a misunderstanding, blaming stress and poor timing. She spoke quickly, eager to regain control, but Eleanor listened without interruption, her silence more unsettling than argument. Turning to Zara, Eleanor asked what had truly happened. The servants held their breath, knowing honesty often came at a cost. Zara hesitated, then spoke carefully, explaining she had only stepped in to stop someone from being hurt. Bianca's composure snapped. She accused Zara of lying, of exaggeration, of manipulation, her voice rising as she demanded Alexander fire the maid immediately. Her need to dominate the narrative revealed more than she intended. Alexander felt torn. Loyalty battled doubt inside him. As memories surfaced of moments he had ignored, signs he had dismissed as stress or misunderstanding, the image of Zara's steady hand haunted him. Eleanor asked a single question that shifted everything, asking how often such incidents occurred when Alexander was not present. The servants looked down, but silence answered, louder than words ever could. Bianca's face drained of color as she realized control was slipping away. She tried to redirect attention, criticizing the staff, questioning their competence, but Eleanor's gaze never wavered. Eleanor addressed the servants directly, assuring them they were safe to speak. One by one, hesitation gave way to quiet admissions of fear, of harsh words, of moments endured in silence to protect their jobs. Zara remained silent, watching as truth unfolded around her. She had not planned to expose anyone. She had only acted on instinct, on a line she refused to let be crossed. Alexander felt shame settle heavily in his chest. This was his home, his responsibility, and yet cruelty had thrived unnoticed beneath polished surfaces and expensive art. Bianca stepped back, cornered by reality, her voice trembling as she accused Eleanor of turning people against her. But Eleanor's response was calm, stating that truth did not need persuasion. Eleanor then revealed why she had come unannounced. Anonymous letters had reached her foundation, describing mistreatment within her son's household, letters she had hoped were exaggerated. Bianca stared in disbelief, realizing the walls she had built were collapsing. Her power depended on silence, and silence had finally broken. Alexander looked at Zara again, seeing her not as staff, but as the catalyst for a reckoning he could no longer avoid. Her courage had exposed what comfort had hidden. Eleanor told Alexander that leadership was measured not by wealth, but by what one allowed under their authority. The words cut deep, reshaping his understanding of strength. As night settled outside the mansion, the atmosphere inside shifted permanently. This was no longer about a single moment of anger, but about choices, accountability, and the future that now demanded to be The night stretched long inside the mansion as Bianca stood exposed by truths she could no longer control. Her confidence dissolved into sharp breaths and frantic explanations, but no one interrupted her this time. The silence itself had become a verdict, heavy and final. Alexander felt a quiet clarity settle in him, painful but undeniable. The woman he planned to marry was not who he believed her to be, and the home he thought he governed had suffered under his blindness. Responsibility pressed down on him like never before. He asked Bianca to leave the room, his voice calm but firm, leaving no space for argument. Shock flickered across her face as she realized this was not a negotiation. For the first time, her authority meant nothing. As she walked away, heels echoing sharply down the corridor, the servants released breaths they didn't know they were holding. A chapter of fear closed behind her with each fading step. Alexander turned to the staff and apologized openly, acknowledging his failure to see what was happening under his roof. The sincerity in his voice felt unfamiliar but necessary, a beginning rather than an end. Eleanor watched her son closely, seeing not weakness but growth. She reminded him that true leadership required courage not only in business, but in moral reckoning, especially when it arrived uninvited. Alexander made immediate changes, placing new protections for the staff and appointing independent oversight to ensure safety and dignity. These were not gestures for appearance, but promises carved into action. Zara stood quietly, unsure of her place in what followed. She had never sought recognition, only fairness, yet her presence had reshaped the future of everyone in that house. Alexander approached her personally, thanking her for her courage and apologizing for the position she had been forced into. His words were not rehearsed. They carried humility he was still learning to hold. He offered Zara a choice, not a command, telling her she could stay under new terms or leave with full support and opportunity elsewhere. The power of choice, he realized, was the greatest respect he could offer. Zara chose to stay, not for status, but to help rebuild what had been broken. Her decision surprised even her. Yet it felt right, rooted in healing rather than fear. Over the following weeks, the mansion transformed. Laughter returned softly, trust rebuilt slowly, and the oppressive tension that once filled the halls faded into memory. Bianca's departure became public, though the details remained private. Alexander resisted spectacle, understanding that growth did not require humiliation, only accountability and distance. Eleanor prepared to leave, satisfied not because conflict had occurred, but because truth had been faced. She told Alexander she was proud, not for success, but for choosing integrity when comfort was easier. Before she left, Eleanor spoke with Zara privately, thanking her not as a benefactor, but as a woman who recognized courage in another. Their exchange needed no witnesses. Alexander began noticing things he had once overlooked, small moments of humanity that wealth had dulled. He listened more, spoke less, and learned the weight of attention. The mansion no longer felt like a monument to power, but a home learning to breathe again. Change did not come overnight, but it came honestly, step by step. Zara continued her work quietly, her life unchanged on the surface, yet deeply different within. She had learned that standing firm did not require shouting, only certainty. Alexander understood now that silence could protect harm or dismantle it, depending on who chose to break it. That lesson reshaped every decision he made afterward. And long after the confrontation faded into memory, the moment a raised hand was stopped mid-air remained etched into every heart present, a reminder that even the smallest act of courage can alter the direction of many lives. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to Lovely Soul Stories for more emotional stories that stay with you.